Would you like to get to know me better? Well, Dag the Evogus Fulcher. Hi, hello, and welcome. This is Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And yeah, it's an interesting one where, we receive a lot of communication from people about the teaching that we do in the Irish Pagan School, about the content we give, and we're honored. We really, really are honored. It's a vocation and it's an occupation. It's a vocation as much as an occupation for myself and Laura to get real information out there, to challenge the misconceptions and the ignorances, be it accidental or like inherited, anywhere we can around Irish mythology, spirituality, heritage, culture, etc. Um, and it does lead to some interesting conversations at times, and there is this whole parasocial psychology element to it, where people think they know a person because they see the content that they produce online. So that's been running around in my mind of late, and I thought, well, maybe people want to get to know me a bit better. And for that, I sit down every week. I go through all of the content and the emails and the comments and everywhere, trying to find the answers to the questions that you have asked us, the comments, the content, what's going on in the world, and to provide the education, the content, and the perspective, really, the gift of perspective, from Irish cultural circumstances and education that we provide. But that perspective is also mine about who I am. And so I thought I would talk today about something that's very, very close to my own heart personally, and that is fear. I am a very fearful person. You might not know that looking at me here in the internet. Absolutely not. Like, oh yeah, he's so gregarious and charming and chatty. And, if you've met me in person, or at events or traveling or anything like that at all, or you join us for our hangout social sessions, I seem to be very, what's the word? Extrovert. Extrovert. Um, I'm not. I'm kind of an ambivert in that on occasions I can be an extrovert, or a lot of other times I'm actually a full-on introvert. Now, if you don't know, if you're unfamiliar with those terms, an extrovert is someone who gains energy or kind of is impassioned or invigorated by interactions with other people. Introverts tend to gain energy and to kind of by interaction, well, or actually just no interactions with anybody, tending towards being alone and, like, choosing solitary practices, and that's what invigorates them and restores them. So ambiverts are someone who can gain energy and be inspired or energized by interacting with people or by being on their own. My tendencies is more towards the introverted. If I'm not actually working or if I'm not in front of people, I will happily be sitting there reading a book, walking around the home with my headphones on, listen to a podcast or some music or whatever it is. I've actually gone back recently to 1940s music because I'm a big, big fan of Glenn Miller and his big band sound. There's a factoid about me that you didn't really may not have wanted to know or may not have known. But fear. Why do I want to talk about fear at the moment? As I said, I do my best to try and answer questions when they're presented to us, and there are some kind of great suggestions in there that I will be coming around to. So thank you very much, all of you who do email and comment. We do go through and read them for perspectives or potential content that we can generate, because there's no point me just talking about what I want all the time if I'm not actually talking about what it is you're interested in. But on occasion, it's worth kind of taking that step to get to know us a bit better and to allow for us to express ourselves, especially when we have a lot going on. So, speaking of a lot going on, there's a lot going on in our world at the moment. And that is what's currently driving my particular form of fear at the moment. But at the same time, there is hope. Um, there's a lot of elections going on around the world, and most notably, quite recently in 2024, here we've had the shift in power from the Conservative Party to the Labour Party for the first time in 14 years in our next door neighbour, Britain. Um, I remember the last time Labour parties were actually in power, and the origins of the Labour Party is supposed to be from unionized workers, and they're supposed to represent, like, those who kind of work in regular jobs, not the people who are looking after. Okay, so not to get into politics too much, but a conservative party is a party that wants to maintain a status quo. A lot of those parties tend to be people of privilege and tend to be people of wealth, and that's why they want to be conservative in their decisions and maintain a status quo. When we look at all of the recent prime ministers and such from the Conservative Party, a lot of them actually went to the same college, school, fancy environment. I'm not here to do a takedown, but it is a shift, hopefully, that could do a lot for the people and the perspectives over there. Now, we have done elections here ourselves, and it's still a little bit ambiguous as to what's actually going to happen here. There was a hope or that there will be enough of a drive for change in Ireland to step away from the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael main parties. But I suppose we'll still have to see how that kind of manages because there's a housing crisis going on in our country, and there is an immigration crisis going on all over the world. But everyone talking about housing crisis and immigration crisis are actually just missing the larger conversation and narratives. It's what's fucking causing it. What's causing all of these problems? What's causing the mass migration of people to flee their fucking homes? Oh, well, it's war again. It's the same story, it's the same narrative, but the fear that is presented to regular people is that, oh, they're coming for your jobs or they're coming to kind of take away stuff from you. And all of that leads to a rise in fascist thinking, in the rhetoric, the standard kind of rhetoric playbook of othering people so that they can be dehumanized. Comments coming out of the UK electoral procedure and the rise of Nigel Farage and his pretty much his fascist party were about, well, just shoot the boats with the immigrants coming over in it. No, 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 we're not going to shoot the immigrants. We're just going to shoot the boats and force them to turn back. Fucking Rishi Sunak is like, yeah, well, when they get here, we're just going to deport them to Congo in Africa. And there was a problem with that in the UK courts, which was the Congo is not registered as a safe country to send people to. It's a dangerous country. Like, so we can't just export people there just because we don't want them. And so what happened was that the parliament made a whole new judgment and a whole new ruling to reclassify Congo as a safe place so that they could justify sending people who have come to the UK seeking freedom and support and seeking sanctuary, because that's what refugees are. They're people seeking sanctuary from oppression and harm and danger, and they're just going to send them off to a different place that we have reclassified as safe. It's frustrating, and it drives a lot of fear for me. When we come to Ireland specifically, why am I talking about the UK if I'm Ireland and Irish? Why am I having comment on it? It's like they're our fucking next door neighbors. Imperialist mindset is what dominated my country for 800 fucking years of oppression and harm. Like, Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, not even 100 years old at the moment. We've had like the centenary of the Rising, absolutely, but the Rising was not when we got declared a republic. It was our own declaration, but it was not recognized for another decade or more, almost 2 decades, I think. So that's a problem. And then we go a little bit further, cross the waters again to France. And the news out of France until yesterday was terrifying because a snap election put forward by the President Macron over there and led to an election of 33% majority for a far right fascist group, a political party. And so they had to go through second and third rounds of it wasn't enough to create government. So they went through another rounds of voting. And this most recent round of voting, all of the left-leaning parties, all of social parties looking for the well-being of people, removed the whole other candidates so that it could be very, very clear that they wanted to get a left-leaning government in, and that forced this right-leaning political body into third place, which means that they're not in position of authority or power. They won't be in government. There's enough. of left-leaning groups now elected to actually form a government without including this right element. And now, again, I'm talking about lefts and rights, but it's not Democratic and Republican in the same way as the US would have it. It is about the the sense of social obligations and like respect that we would have around those, and then all of this platform of rising fascism, which is a big cause for fear, is because of the separation, because of the frustrations, because of the housing crisis, because of the capitalist agenda that is being driven. Like going back to my own country here, there are lots of developments for buildings and for housing being created, but a lot of them are being snapped up for rentals, like companies, large financial companies buying entire estates in order to rent them and then make money that way, or people buying additional properties to turn them into Airbnbs when there's a huge kind of spike of children living homeless on the streets of Ireland. And it's a horror. It's an absolute fucking shit show. But that's not my only fear, because we also have a further election that's going to be happening towards the end of the year. And this one is sitting a little bit difficult for me, because Laura and I are going to be traveling to the States in November. And it is the presidential election that's going to be happening over there. Okay, of course, why am I an Irish person passing comment on someone other country's election? Well, it's election between a Democrat and a Republican. But the Republican representative is pretty much laying out a plan to become a dictator, an authoritarian dictator, day one. And all of the authoritarian dictator playbook, like it's literally called Project 2025, is all about undermining all of the efforts that have been made to grow and develop the country to where it is now. Now, it's not perfect. No country fucking is perfect, as much as I'm talking about my own country is not fucking perfect either. But there are people who are directly targeted by this project. There are people who are directly undermined and hurt and harmed. Like the overturning of Roe versus Wade as a political kind of declaration was a huge fucking step backwards in the rights of bodily autonomy for people who have a womb or can bear children. It's a huge fucking issue, all because of again a conservative plan to fight for the right of life. Okay, but you want to prevent abortions. Okay, well, where's all of the support for education? Where's wiping out student debt? Where's all of the free healthcare to support these parents, these mothers raising their children? No, you can't have universal healthcare because that's socialism, and socialism is communism. It's a whole lot of bullshit. So why am I afraid? Why am I afraid specifically because of that? Well, if if a certain person gets elected and they have their agenda of militant reform and control, there's a long-standing agreement on my island here, Ireland, between Shannon Airport and the US for the movement of military forces. Now, Ireland is a neutral country, and I think our neutrality is something that we should definitely be holding on to. And I have other kind of conversation elements about that. But having the transportation of forces going from our island, having a stop off into committing whatever acts they're going to commit around the world is a problem. And if we try and take a hard stance around saying no to that, are we going to be invaded? Are we looking down, like, again, being very cynical, thinking about negative thoughts on this one, and again, fearful thoughts, allowing for the fear to have a space to allow me to consider and to think about these things? What is the worst that can happen? Ireland gets invaded. Ireland gets taken over, because that's the only. If I was a military dictator, I'd have to fucking do it myself to guarantee that I could move my forces and troops wherever I wanted to. So I'm afraid of that. But how do we fight fear? How do we fight fear? Do we just let it control us? Do we let it dominate us? Do we let it dictate our actions, our emotions. No, we fight fear with two things in my mind: education and hope. Being ignorant of something doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Being ignorant of something doesn't mean that you're safe from it. It might be uncomfortable, it might be difficult, it might be scary to face into this information, but the only way you can make the right decision for you, for your community, for your locality, for your state, for your country, for your continent is by being informed. And once you have an understanding of what you need to do, then it's a matter of doing it. Take the action and hope. Hope for the best. Don't let the depression immobilize you. Don't let the fear stop you from taking action. Don't let the negative talk allow you to immobilize you into doing nothing and thinking, well, it's all over anyway. I'm a very fearful person. I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to myself. But we got to hold out hope. And some mad notion in me, like, when I think about, okay, well, what if Ireland ends up the targeted nation or a dominant dictatorship in the United States? And how do I combat that? Well, I look at the people over there and I hope that they're going to make the right decisions. I talk about stuff where I can within my platform and hope that people look at the information objectively in front of them and consider what is the best, not just for them personally, but for their community, for the collective, for the world. Go beyond your own doorstep and think about not just your neighbor. And even if you are someone who doesn't identify as pagan, if you're a Catholic or a Christian, love thy neighbor as I have loved you. Fundamental core premise from the words of JC himself. And if it doesn't stipulate love your neighbor if they're black or if they're white or if they're straight, it doesn't stipulate fucking anything. Guy rocked around with everyone, allowed everyone into his group. His apostles, his disciples, everyone in his group had problems, had difficulties, were sinners, but he accepted them. He gave them space to grow beyond it and encouraged them to do it, not just for him, not just because he said so, because it was in their best interest. So get outside yourself. Think about your neighbor, think about your community, and do the best you can. And then allow hope to keep you going when the despair is strong, when the fear is close to your heart, like mine. Allow hope to kind of keep you going. And this is where I get into this mad notion. If a US dictatorship were to form and they were to try and target Ireland as some form of military outpost towards world domination, I hope that everyone who identifies as Irish or Irish descending would stand up and say, fuck off away from this island. People all over the world who came home to vote, actually, when we look at the referendum about abortion rights in our country, there was a whole movement about home to vote and people helping people come home, people funding collections in order to get people airplane tickets so they could come home to vote in this referendum to straighten out Irish constitution on this particular topic. So fucking inspiring. There are Irish people all over this world. And there are Irish people connected to communities all over this world. And there are Irish people descended from Irish people all over this world. So I would hope that, if anyone were to try and come against Ireland, those people would stand up. Those people would voice up for this small little nation which seems to have a big impact. I had the amazing experience recently to go to the Immigration Museum up in Dublin. It's called the Epic Museum. And if you get the opportunity to go, absolutely. Even if you're an Irish person, absolutely take the time, go into Dublin city centre and just roam around it, walk around it. It is so eye-opening how much history is presented in this amazing kind of walk around experience. But then to see the impact of our nation across the entire globe, see the impact of Irish people on medicine, on science, on art, on expression, Nobel Prize winning writers, not just one, more than one, for writing, for poetry, for the expression of arts, but then soldiers, warriors who fought in other people's battles, who fought to secure, even before our republic, even before our Ireland, even before our, like, even when we were conquered, for fuck's sake, we were still fighting everyone else's battles. And in many cases, voluntarily. I have two great grandfathers who actually fought in the Battle of the Dardanelles. And that was an absolute fucking bloodbath. And if those two guys hadn't have survived that and come home, I would not be here. But they weren't conscripted. They volunteered. They volunteered to step up and say no, to fight for what was right, to fight for their values. And even though, yes, the army that they signed up to do it in was the British Army, okay, they still knew that that would better Ireland in the long run. I saw a meme the other day of this British person with a British flag beside talking to a person with an Irish flag beside them. And the British flag is all upset and angry. It's like, if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking German. And then just there's this slow moment as the person with the Irish flag pans in and begins to remember, and then it fades away in the background to showing the decline of the Irish language on the island of Ireland over the last, 400 or 500 years or more. If it wasn't for that, we'd be speaking for Irish. And so the impact that we have, like refugees coming from Palestine and all the rest, and the damage that's being done, that's was done because of imperialist mentality created by Great Britain. It's imperialism that's driving Russia to try and target Ukraine. Time and again, it is this dominant powers trying to justify their control and their power of resources that undermine the stability and status quo, all the while voting in a conservative party for their own landscape to maintain the status quo, because that's what leads to the most advantage for them. But again, hope. I'm not wearing a Superman t-shirt today. I just couldn't put it on because I'm finding it hard to find hope. I really am struggling, but I'm going to keep struggling because I believe in people at the end of the day, and I know we can be better. And if everyone can get out of their own fucking way to vote in a left-leaning government in France at the last minute, if everyone can kind of use their voices and say conservative policy has damaged our country over the last while and make sure that fascism isn't raised in the UK, if Ireland can say, okay, well, we can make movements towards it, but on a bigger scale, we can have marriage equality, we can vote in abortion rights into our constitution, like we can do all of these things, then change can happen. And as much as I'm going to be over in the US in November, and I'm afraid of that, I have a significant amount of fear about being in the US during that electoral circumstance. I still hope that the right people will come out large enough and strong enough to make their voices clear, because that's all we can really do. Fight our fear by overcoming our ignorance and then holding out hope that when we come down to it at the very end of it, humans are going to look after humans. All of the apocalypse narratives out there, all of the post-apocalyptic movies about the destruction of society and all the rest of it, it is fiction. And it's very, very popular because that's where the mental landscape is or has been for the last decade. But it's also wrong because fundamentally speaking, when a collective greater society collapses, yes, there'll be anarchy. Yes, there'll be, like, difficulty. But as we saw with a pandemic that swept the entire globe, neighbors looked after neighbors. Those who could go did for everyone. People going out onto the street to read poetry to each other. People standing in queues and bringing home essentials to their neighbors to make it easier for them. So yes, it's a fearful time in the world. We've also had a very real example, a very real, prominent. Let's not. Yes, okay. The global pandemic is scary as fucking shit. And there was a body count there, and it wasn't handled very well from the upper people, the upper management of many countries as well. But when it came down to local communities, people stood up for fucking people. People stood up for people around themselves, and that's proof. If we could do it then, we can do it now, and we can keep doing it. And if society does actually collapse, fine. I'll trust in people. I'll trust in people around me, and I will act from a place of informed hopefulness to the best of my ability. So, as I said, thank you very much for this. It is about getting to know me better. I asked the question at the top end. I don't even know if anyone stayed for the length of this video, but for me, I'm grateful for the fact that I was able to talk about this kind of stuff, and hopefully it might help someone else with their perspectives. Know that they're not alone. And if you are feeling afraid, if you are feeling a sense of doom, you need to be aware of that. And the only way to combat it is to learn more. And then when you know more, take the actions, do the things, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, tell people how you're going to vote, tell people how, you're concerned about things, and then have hope. Allow for that to be the thing that keeps you going when you get up the next day and get up the next day. Because if the governments were to fall within the next few whiles, the sun's still going to come up the next day. Still going to have to get up and carry on with what we need to do. We still need to get up and look after ourselves and our family. And so it's not going to turn into horror dystopia where everyone's out raiding each other and all the rest of it. And actually, there was another conversation, Laura, and I had recently. All of these prepper guys going to think they become hunter gatherers if there was a collapse in society. Yeah, they're pretty much all guaranteed to die within the first month because they don't know how to clean properly. They don't know how to sew clothing properly. They don't have any of the core skills needed to actually look after themselves and make medicine or understand what herbs are edible and what ones are poison. So, yeah, it's not going to turn into some wild outback dystopian or whatever. It's gonna collapse into where's your localized community and how do you look after your neighbor, because that's what will keep us all safe in the long run. And if we can take that energy, take that perspective, and take it outside of our own house, take it outside of our own neighbors or our own street, and consider the world as a global community, consider our countries as global as communities, then maybe we can start looking at the best interest of everyone through that lens instead of allowing people in power to dictate what they feel is the most profitable circumstance for the people who live on the land that they choose to claim as ownership and control over. Thank you. Anyway, if you'd like to know more about the Irish Pagan School, check out more videos, check out our podcasts. Um, I will be giving more content. I'll be getting back to answer questions. That will going to be happening, but I just needed to talk a little bit about me, and maybe you might in some way know me a little bit better. Make sure you pop on to irishpagan.school/free. You can pick up a year's worth of free research there, resources, book recommendations, free full classes that you can take to engage in your own awareness and education. Again, that knowing more element of Irish spirituality, culture, mythology, etc. And the last thing I would say was look after yourself. Don't let fear immobilize you. Get up. Go for the stupid walk for your mental health. Drink the water, even, sometimes you don't really want to, because it's a long story. No one is a short story. We all are sagas in the making if we're willing to do what we need to do and be the heroes of not just our own narrative, but someone else's story too. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. August long. Goodbye.